Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I have another piano lesson for you. In the last video, I taught some basics such as skips and steps, intervals, and the different rests that had matched the notes I taught in the previous video before that one. But in today's video, I'll be teaching 3 more new notes and how to count their beats and time signature, which will help a lot with counting beats and keeping them even. So without any further ado, let's jump right into this lesson. And don't forget to subscribe so if you like this video and you want to see more of them in the future. The 3 notes that I'll be covering in the beginning portion of this video are the 8th note, the dotted half note, and the dotted quarter note. So we're going to start with the 8th note. So I'll put a picture of one on the screen as I explain it. The 8th note is represented by a large solid dot with a plain stem and a single flag at the top of the stem. So as you can see in the picture, there's the solid dot like the quarter note, except there's a single flag at the top of the stem. It is held for half a beat, or you can also say half a count. Now with full beat notes like the quarter note and the half note, you can sing ta or ta to keep each beat steady. But since the 8th note is half a beat, that means we need to count for half a ta, or half one count, to get the value of 1/8 note. Now it might be confused, like harder to sing half a ta because there's no such thing as half a ta. So instead we use counting numbers. 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like that. Now this will make more sense later on when I explain the time signature, but for now I want you to know the difference with the different notes so that when it comes to play music using a fully constructed staff with the time signature, then you'll know how the beats fall into place, knowing all the note names and values already. But back to the 8th note. So if we have 2 8th notes, the way you could count it is 1 and. Remember, the 1 represents half of one beat, aka 1/8 note. When you add the and, that's another half a beat. So when they're together, it equals 1 full beat, also 2 8th notes together. So 1 is 1/8 note, and then we have 1 and, that's 2 8th notes. When you add clapping, it's easier to keep a steady beat. So 1 and. Again, 1 and. Right now I'm just counting 2 8th notes. Let's say I have 4 8th notes. It'll be 1 and 2 and. Each clap is 1/8 note. So don't mistake it by saying 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, because at that point you're clapping like 8 8th notes. So for 4 8th note, it's 1 and 2 and. So I'll also do it on the piano. So I'm just going to choose any random note on the piano. Let's say first finger on C, and let's say I have 4 8th notes again. I'm just going to play it and count it out loud. 1 and 2 and. Again, 1 and 2 and. And make sure you don't hold the key for too long, because then that will just add more value and it's not going to be an 8th note anymore. So I've put together this little practice piece to help you get the hang of counting 8th notes. So here's how it should look and sound when you play it. And one more thing before I start playing it, you can see on the screen that there are 2 staff boxes examples. The small one in the top corner, that is just to show you that usually when you're drawing multiple 8th notes on a staff, you don't do each with a single flag individually. When you have multiple 8th notes in one bar consecutively, you want to use a bar to connect them all. So it's like they're all under one flag. So just a heads up. So this is how it should sound. So we're on left hand, and we're on the 5th finger on G over here. Oh, I'm gonna move you guys over a little bit. So we go 1 and 2 and 3 and. Again. 1 and 2 and 3 and. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and. And last time. 1 and 2 and 3 and. So that's how it should look and sound like. And make sure you count, so it really helps to keep a steady beat and to make sure you don't hold the notes for too long. So it's 1 and 2 and 3 and each beat is 1/8 note. So make sure you keep that nice and steady. Okay, so I brought you guys back to the center. So now we're going to move on to the dotted half note. So again, I'm going to put the dotted half note on the screen so you guys know what it looks like. So the next two notes are special kinds of notes because they have something attached to them called the dot. So they don't just stand alone with their regular value. But I'm going to start off by explaining what the dotted part of it means. The dot can be added to any note. It is located right beside at the bottom of the note. The dot always has the same value, which every time any note you put it beside, it will always have the same value, which is half the value of the note that it's beside. So again, a dot is worth half. So the value of it changes depending on which note it's beside, but the way you figure out that note is always the same. So you have a note and the dot is worth half of what that note is worth. So let's say I have a dotted half note, which is one of today's examples. A half note by itself is 2 beats, right? So if we add a dot to that, to create that dotted half note, a dot would be worth half of the half note. It is a half of the half note, which makes the dot 1 beat, because 1 is half of 2. Therefore, the dotted half note's total value is 3 beats. There are different ways that you can count the beats for a dotted half note. You can either sing it like this, ta, 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 ta. So that was just 3 dotted half notes. So the ta, the first part of it, is for the half note, which is 2 beats, then plus another ta for the dot. Ta, 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 ta. Or you can just simply count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Like this. On a keyboard, it would be like this. So I'm going to put fourth finger on right hand on F. 1, 2, 3, off. 1, 2, 3, off. I just played 2 dotted half notes. Again, 1, 2, 3, off. 1, 2, 3, off. Or ta, 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 like that. So when you play it, you have to hold the note for 3 counts like I did. And once again, I put together a practice piece so you can get the hang of playing the 3 beats for a dotted half note. So I've put the counting and the singing, so whichever you feel more comfortable doing and you find easier, go with that. So on our right hand, we have first finger on F. So we're just going to play the pattern that I put there and make sure to hold it for the correct amount of beats. So ta, 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 ta. And then we'll do it the counting now. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Once you get the hang of that, you can move on to the dotted quarter note. For the last note that I'm explaining in this video, we have the dotted quarter note. Just like I said before, the dot always has the same value, the same way to count the value, which is half the number of beats of the note that it's beside. So if a quarter note is worth 1 beat, when it's on its own, then we add the value of the dot, which is half the quarter notes, which should be then worth half a beat, because half is half of 1. And add that to the quarter note, the total value we get is 1.5 beats. So in total, a dotted quarter note is worth 1.5 beats. When counting the beats, it may be confusing to sing the ta's because there's half a beat, and you can't sing for half a beat. It's just not accurate. So when we instead we count it like it were a quarter note and an eighth note, because an eighth note is worth half a beat, right? So like the dot is basically an eighth note. So we sing it like it were a quarter note and an eighth note, so we would count 1, and for the quarter, then we just say 2 to show that half a beat, which is the dot. So altogether it would be like this: 1 and 2. That's accounting for one dotted quarter note. Again, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Then when we play the dotted quarter note on the piano, it should sound like this. Put my fifth finger on G. Oh, actually, I'll use my left hand this time. So I'll put my second finger on G here. 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. Just like that. I've also put together another practice piece for the dotted quarter note. So I'm just going to play it so you know how it should look and sound like. So we have the left hand again, and we have third finger on A. I put the numbers in, so 1 and 2, 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 1 and 2. Okay, let's try that again. 1 and 2, 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 1 and 2. Sorry about that. So that's how it should look and sound like. So make sure you practice and practice so you can get the hang of how to count each note. The further along you go with my videos, the harder the content is going to get. So make sure you really know the basics and how to count these basic notes for when you do want to play. Because eventually, any person that learns the piano wants to play some nice advanced pieces eventually. So make sure you practice, because remember, practice makes perfect, like I always say. So now we're done with the notes. We're going to move on to time signature. Now that we've covered those new notes, I found that it only made sense for me to explain what time signature is. As we get more complex notes, it's easier to use time signatures to help identify the different beats and how they are divided in music. Now, the definition for time signature is how the music is to be counted. The time signature, again, time signature is how the music is to be counted. The time signature is written at the beginning of the staff after the clef and key signature. So as you can see on the screen, I'll put pictures of the different types of time signatures as I explain. So you see the time signature is right beside the clef, okay? So in any piece of music, the time signature will always be beside the clef. So when you're setting up a staff, that's how you do it. Time signature consists of two numbers, like you see in the picture, written like a fraction, so one above the other. The top number of the time signature tells you how many beats to count in a bar. Again, the top number of the time signature tells you how many beats to count in a bar. A bar is the little actions that music gets cut up into. I didn't explain that before, but a bar is like the little sections in music. So I just put a picture of it like that. It's the little sections that you see there on the screen. This could be any number. Most often the numbers of the beats will fall between 2 and 12. There's usually never a number before 12. I'm pretty sure there has never been a number above 12. The bottom number tells you what kind of note gets the beat. Now this is where it gets kind of confusing, because you have to know what number matches up with which note. That is whether to count the beats as quarter notes, eighth notes, or 16th notes, etc. So the only numbers you will see as the bottom number, the denominator, will correspond to note values 2 equaling half notes, 4 equaling quarter note, 8 equaling eighth note, and 16th equaling 16th note. I didn't yet explain what a 16th note is or teach it, so don't worry too much about that. It's not going to be in today's video. So again, 2 equaling half note, 4 equaling quarter note, 8 equaling eighth note, and 16 equaling 16th note. So I have 3 different examples here of time signatures that I'm going to explain. There are many others, but these I find are the easiest. So let's start with 4/4 time. If the top number represents the number of beats per bar and the bottom tells you the type of note, then that would mean there are 4 quarter notes per bar equaling 4 beats per bar. So 4, 4. So on the top and the bottom you have 4. So the 4 on top is the number of beats in a bar. So in every bar there's going to be 4 beats. And the bottom note tells you which note gets it. If 4 represents a quarter note, that means each quarter note gets 1 beat. So like you see in the diagram, when you need to get a certain amount of beats in a bar, you can use an assortment of notes. You don't just need to use quarter notes. Here's what the 4/4 time looks like with the quarter notes. Okay? But here's what the 4/4 time looks like with other notes. There are so many notes that I've already taught you, about 6 of them, and you can use any combination of these notes to get to the 4 beats. If you need to divide it in like little morsels, because the note is half of the quarter note's worth, then that's how you'll know how to do that. But for now, just know that each quarter note gets a beat, and there's 4 beats in the bar, and you can use an assortment of any kind of notes to get that 4 beats. So here's what the 4/4 time looks like with the quarter notes, but I could also use the other notes that we've learned to equal 4 beats. As long as you have the correct number of beats and the correct note that gets the beats, then you have a proper constructed measure that follows the time signature. I'm just going to play each example and show you that every example has 4 beats each. So I have 3 examples for each time signature, but the first example is just a plain one using the note that gets 1 beat. So at the top we have the plain one, which is just 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know why I use that fingering. That's what it said there, but the numbers at the bottom are just how to count it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 quarter notes and 4 beats in that single bar. Now I have another example, and you see that the numbers are clumped together. That's because those 2 notes get 2 beats. So if there's 4 beats in a bar and I have 2 half notes, the 2 half notes equal 4 beats in total. So one half note gets 2 beats. So I'm going to play that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. And then the third example, we have a quarter note with a dotted half note. In total, that gives me 4 because a quarter note is worth 1 beat and a dotted half note is worth 3. So 1 plus 3 is 4, exactly. So let's start by playing with our first finger on D again. And go 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. That last example might be confusing with the same note, so I'm just gonna say we have D and E. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. So as long as you have 4 beats in a bar and you know that a quarter note gets each beat, then you're on the right track. Here's another example. The next example is 3/4 time. The 3 means that there are 3 beats per bar and that the note that gets each beat is a quarter note. Again, like in 4/4 time, because the 4 represents a quarter note. So here's how it would look and sound like with just quarter notes. So we have the 3 quarter notes. Again. One more time. So now that I just played the first example on the sheet, like the practice piece. So I'm going to play the next 2 examples. So in the next example, we have a quarter note and a half note. Together they have a total of 3 beats. So let's just play it. So we have 5th finger on G. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then the last example, we have 2 eighth notes and 2 quarter notes. In total, they equal 3 beats because 2 quarter notes makes 1 full beat, and then the other 2 quarter notes is 2 beats. So in total, that's 3. So let's just play it. So 5th finger on G again, and we'll do 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3, just like that. So make sure to keep it steady. You saw how it's tapping my leg. That just helps me to keep it steady, a steadier beat. You can tap your foot with just make sure all your beats are even, all your notes are even. And finally, for the last example, we have 4/8 time. In this example, the 4 means that there are 4 beats per bar, and each beat is represented by an 8th note because 8 represents an 8th note. Pretty straightforward. It's pretty self-explanatory, like what you see in the diagram. Again, I'll give different examples of 4/8 time and play them so you know how 4/8 time should sound like. Again, you can use any combination of note as long as you have the 4/8 notes and the 4 beats per bar. The 4 beats per bar, which is the 8th note gets every beat. So 4/8 notes. What each bar should equal to 4/8 notes basically. So I'm gonna play the plain version, the plain Jane version, which is just 2 sets of 8th notes. So we have 2nd finger on F, and we just start 1, 2, 3, 4. And notice how before when I said when you count 8th notes you use 1 and 2 and 3, we don't do that here because if one 8th note gets 1 beat, we don't need to subdivide. That's called subdividing. Whatever the time signature tells you, whichever note gets the beat, you don't need to subdivide because that note just gets 1 beat. So since the 8th note is the number that we're using to represent which note gets each beat, that means we don't need to do the 1 and because it's just 1 beat. So I'll play it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next, we have the second example, which is a quarter note and 2 8th notes. Again, that will give us a total of 4 8th notes, which is 2 beats if you really think about it. But it's 4 8th notes, 4 beats of 8th notes. So I'll put my 2nd finger again on F, and we just go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the quarter note gets 2 beats because 2 8th note equals 1 quarter note, and then the 8th note is just 1 1. So I'll play it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And finally, for the last example, we have 1 half note in the entire bar. 1 half note gives you 4 8th notes because if 2 8th note equals a quarter note, then another 2 will equal another quarter note. And if 2 quarter notes equals a half note, then a half note equals 4 quarter notes. I don't know if that was confusing. I had a picture of a pyramid that I used when I was just starting to beginning to learn these advanced notes. But it's like a pyramid to show you how like the notes break down and how each different amounts of notes equals 1 note, like that. So we just hold that for the entire time. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. So that's it for this piano lesson, and I really hope it was helpful and useful and that you guys understand all the concepts that I taught today. Comment down below if you have any questions or concerns or suggestions, and because I would appreciate that a lot so I can really help you guys out and I'm not just doing this for nothing. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this one. Comment down below any video suggestions that you have for me. And I can't wait to see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.